Good. You want to start?
Okay. You sure?
I think so. It's fine. Okay, go ahead.
All right. Good afternoon. Is this for the tiny microphone working?
Yeah.
All right.
Hold on. Let's try to see it on.
Think you have to turn it on?
Here. Let's try that. Here. Perfect.
How about
Now.
Yeah. Better? Well, welcome to this forum associated with the consolidation of Augusta State University and Georgia Health Sciences University. Sometimes I can figure things out, sometimes I can't. I think I know why there are so many empty seats down front. It's because somebody saw the food back there. And you're seated close to the food. And there actually is some food associated with this forum. But the ground rules are you can't get up now and go get your food. You've got to stay through the entire forum. There is some food back there. I think it's Chick-fil-A. And places to eat out in the Grove. How far the food will go, I don't know. But there is food. Now, there's also a second forum today. If by some chance you want to attend a second one today, it'll be down in the Lee Auditorium at Georgia Health Sciences University. It will not be associated with food, as I understand. But you're certainly welcome to attend there as well. Let me welcome you again to this one at Augusta State University. It's good to see all of you here, and I hope you have some questions and are interested in listening to answers and responses to the questions. And let me introduce my colleague in this venture, Dr. Ricardo Azziz. Dr. Azziz.
Good morning. Appreciate everybody being here. Again, we're going to try to have as many of these forums as we can over the months to come. It's important to communicate as much as we can. We communicate through lots of different ways. I have a blog. If you have not checked out the blog, go ahead and do that. It does have some answers to some of the questions that were getting posed. We have, obviously, lots of email communication. But we want to do this in person, in forums, as well as one-on-one on departments and faculty and so on and so forth. So we're going to try to do a lot of that over the months to come. It's important for all of us to know what's going on and to actually know what we don't know. Because a lot of things that are being asked are things that we just simply don't know, and we're going to have to craft this path as we move forward. So I appreciate the opportunity today. We have the food right after this and before the other forum so that anybody who needs to eat can eat on the way. Now, really this is mostly for you, so we can answer questions. I have a series of questions that have been sent by email and other ways. So if we have a lull in the action, I can pull out that card and sort of read some of those and try to answer them. But really, I think Dr. Bloodworth and I would really like to just answer your questions as we go forward and discuss the process of where we are. And frankly, let me just tell you about where we are. We're simply in the same process that we were before, 50 different work groups working very closely. The work groups are composed half of ASU and half of GHSU individuals working closely together to try to answer very specific questions. They go to a centralized CAT, a committee on transformation. I'm trying to remember what CAT stands for. Consolidation Action Committee. Thank you. Or Action Team. And so that, again, is half ASU, half GHSU. They review it to send it back to the work groups or not. And eventually, when they think it's ready, it goes to the committee, the Consolidation Work Group, CWG, that was appointed by the Chancellor. And then it's further vetted, and after that, it moves on up the chain into the application. That's the process. It's as engaging as it can be for something that is moving very, very, very fast, as we have to have at least the rudiments of an organization in place by the October deadline. So lots of times I've heard people say, well, I don't feel engaged, I'm not involved. It's true that not 100% of faculty are involved in all the processes. In fact, not 100% of the faculty, students, and staff are involved in all processes. You're obviously done through committees and work groups. The pace has to be high. And while we would like to say Yes, everybody is involved 100% of the time. That would be disingenuous. It would be disingenuous to tell you that, in fact, we can be. That applies to GHSU as well as to ASU. We're trying our best, actually, to paint a balanced view. I'll tell you that Dr. Bloodworth and I really are not involved in the actual vetting process and creation process. We're just involved in the process when it gets to the working group, the consolidation working group, and occasionally CAT, the consolidation action team, will call us in for some question or another. But in many ways, we are being kept aside, appropriately so, until the work groups have had time to figure things out. Okay? That's really where we are. There's nothing new. In case you want to know about the name, haven't the foggiest. No idea, no prejudice in my mind. If some of you read my blog this last week, that's all I know about naming. And we're working on it. There's a group working on it. And I'm still trying to find that donor to give us the name. So there's nothing really beyond that as far as the name is concerned. Bill, anything you want to add to that?
No, I don't think so. I think you covered it well.
Questions?
I've got one.
Yes, sir.
I'm not sure how the tuition process works. Is the Board of Regents entirely, or do we have any input? Is the Board of Regents entirely in charge of the tuition? I would love to see in this brand new world-class model university situation where people in university college come to school for less tuition. Freshmen and sophomores come into college for more than that, but less than juniors and seniors who come to college for less than graduate students and so on. I would love to see a sort of a seriation of cost for our students so that our most at-risk students don't have to come up with another, what was it? It's going to be 3.5% once we become this major, or even 5% raise. But do we have any control over that?
Good point. The answer is, do we have control over it? Basically, that question is no. And we may have some control. But you know what happened this year, for next year, is the Board of Regents approved a 2.5% increase in tuition, which is the lowest increase since 2003. So that's good. It was made possible by the fact that the General Assembly and the Governor appropriated $672.5 million in enrollment increase funding, so-called formula funding for the university system. So that's good. And also, that's our undergraduates, 3% for graduate tuition. The Georgia Health Sciences also a 2.5% increase for undergraduates, lower than the increase at the other half, the increase as at the other research universities. So I think that kind of sets us up well for the future as we try to figure out how to do it. I think there's a lot of interest in accomplishing what your question implied, which is that we make it a little bit easier for those students who have a hard time affording college to go to college here as well as elsewhere. And I think, and I'll say something for Georgia Health Sciences University, that they are committed to providing some private funding based on financial need of students, which we've never had before. So I think there is a real concern here and throughout the state that we find ways, and we know tuition has gone up, but we find ways to make it easier for students who are struggling to go to college without increasing student loan debt.
And so the question, again, for those who didn't hear, had to do about tuition, and I'm not going to add very much to Dr. Bloodworth said. We have some control, but not very much control. But we do want to do two things. I think we have to have some facts as we discuss it. We want to maintain affordability. But affordability has to be tied to success and completion. Getting students in the school is not the same thing as having them succeed and leave the school with a degree or something of value. Okay? We have to be very careful. That's why sometimes the fact of doing it very cheaper in the first 2 years and then more expensive as they progress may not always be very good, because actually you want to progress and finish, right? You don't want to truncate in the second year, unless you're going to do an associate degree. The second question has to do with what happens with the consolidation. So tuition rates will change to that of an R1 university, okay? But we can choose, particularly on the graduate levels, we can choose to try to keep it as low in that range, and we will do that. We actually will probably not be as expensive as UGA or Georgia Tech or any of those places. We're going to try to keep it down for a number of reasons. One, because we think it's right. Two, because we need to be competitive, right? Students aren't going to be choosing us right off the bat. We're that new university that just got created. But we're also going to try, and I can't guarantee this is actually up to the Chancellor and the Board of Regents, we're going to try to keep people harmless. In other words, students within the system are going to, we're hoping, right, that we don't have to increase their tuition, beyond the average, whatever, 2.5% or 3% yearly during their tenure here. Now, tenure, of course, has to be a certain amount of time. Every time Dr. Bloodworth reminds that occasionally we have 10-year students, and that's not going to be able to be done. But we do want to hold people harmless because at the end of the day, they came in on one promise, and we can't really switch and bait in that regard. But at the end of the day, we don't have a lot of control. Yes, sir.
Good afternoon. My question centers on graduation. I'll be finishing up this fall, and I've been curious about how that's going to be handled in terms of what my degree will say, who I'll be walking with come the spring. Will it be combined graduation or just Augusta State, GHSU? How is that going to be handled?
So what you probably didn't hear is you didn't get the memo that said that everybody was about to graduate this fall has another year to complete because you need to complete another year. The reality is dealt with this before. And so what you'll do is, by SACS, you will get a diploma that has the official name of whatever the name of the school is at that time. But what we've also done for a charge of, yes, $5 or $10, because it costs to print it, you will have a second diploma with the name of your choosing of the previous school. So right now, in fact, our graduates get a diploma that says MCG and get a diploma that says GHSU. And in fact, some of them may actually have to be 3 diplomas, right? But you have to have one that is official with the official name of the accredited school. And then we do give that opportunity, in fact, to create a diploma with the same type of rubric, et cetera, as the traditional one. And over time, of course, you can imagine 20 years from now, if things have gone well for the university, you're really going to be playing the one that was given to you with the right name, and you will keep the other ones otherwise. But in the short term, it's helped a lot of people, and that's how we've dealt with it ourselves. So you'll get probably 2 diplomas. But when are you graduating, you said?
I'm graduating.
When? This fall?
This fall, yes.
This fall you'll have one diploma. Augusta State University. By the way, graduates or alumni can actually apply back to get an updated diploma. So, you can actually do that because it'll get confusing over time. So we have a system in place that we already do that. Other questions? Say, not a bashful group, right?
Hi, I'm Jillian Hobday. I'm actually the new news editor for the Bell Ringer. So nice to meet you. This is kind of a heavy question, but bear with me. With consolidation, the term money kind of stands behind it. Consolidation, a few things you're going to have to cut here and there, obviously. That being said, we don't need 2 public entities or 2 ITs or 2 environmental services or 2 purchasing departments. And the best way to save money is obviously through the employee. So approximately how many jobs are we planning on seeing lost in the near future? And is Dr. Kenny, is she planning on facilitating any of the consolidation plans, such as joining departments and, starting those layoffs?
Well, I love it. That's why you're probably the new editor of the Bell Ringer. You see, she didn't say, are you going to cut? She said, I know you're going to cut, so tell me how much. They should give you a prize for that. But the answer is, we haven't really planned on cutting. Because we're going to still have to do the same work. I mean, if I got police officers, for example, so we have a security force, we have a new campus. What are we going to do? We have the same policemen, GHSU now, patrol up here? It's not be possible. So the point is, we're 2 relatively lean organizations. I think all of us who know here, and I can tell you, I think ASU is relatively lean in general, and GHSU has been lean as well. We got to deal now with a big enterprise, and so the number of people that we're going to need is going to go up by the amount of the sum. So we really have not done and have not really genuinely planned on cutting lots of positions or any positions at all. The key, though, is growth. I think everybody has to be very, very clear. we do not grow and we begin to shrink, then clearly the number of physicians we will need in all sectors will decrease. But my hope is that this consolidation will allow us to begin to grow, right? To grow with the people that we have in place. And so growth cost may be less, right? But no, we are not planning on doing that at all unless you have some news in your sources that I was unaware of. It should be. The logic tells you that, you know, at the end of the day, we have not found a lot of spare parts that we really didn't need as far as we could tell. Would you agree?
You know, but I understand the question, and there's a lot of anxiety out there. I know there is, especially among non-faculty staff about jobs in the future. But, you know, from having watched the process so far, I think that what Dr. Azziz says is true. You know, and we know that here we're really. Anybody working in an office that's overstaffed? Want to raise your hand? You know, we're really lean, and the consolidation makes things a little more complicated. It places a little more value on staff getting the job done, getting new jobs done, working through all the things we have to work through. So, I can't say don't be anxious, but I think I can say that your job security is probably as good going into consolidation as it would have been if we were not going into consolidation. You know, still things depend upon state appropriations and growth and so forth. Now, somebody sent a question and said, can you guarantee I'll have a job in 5 years? Well, I can't guarantee that Dr. Azziz is going to have a job in 5 years. I'm going to have a job in 5 years. But, you know, we know the anxiety is out there. But from what I can see, there's a lot of the fear is about change, and I understand that. But I think job security is going to be at no greater risk, and maybe even less of a risk in consolidation than it is currently. I don't know.
As we get larger and we grow, we will have, as Dr. Bloodworth says, greater job security. Now, I don't want to be disingenuous. There will be a couple of things that will change. Reporting structures will change. You know, your seat may not be the same seat that you had before, or you may not be reporting the same person you reported before. And Dr. Bloodworth and I have worked very hard to try to come up with a structure that actually is logical, is necessary, and so on and so forth. The second thing is that really what is expected of you in your job may also change. You know, you were doing this, your job may change, may expand, will be larger, will be smaller, will be more focused. It depends on the need, right? So things will change. I think if you take that into consideration, you'll realize that at the end of the day, we will have and have lots of work for everybody, as long as everybody understands that the future really, as always, requires you to be doing excellent work. And I know everybody does, so I'm very confident that that will continue.
I have a two-part question. First is whether you expect to see a uniform promotion and tenure guideline for the entire consolidated university, or whether it would be college by college. And the second part would be, if it does change significantly for any department, would the existing faculty fall under the current guidelines, or would they be expected to immediately adopt new ones, even if the new ones are dramatically different?
That's a very good question. By the way, the reason I'm sipping on something is not like Jackie Gleason. I don't know. Maybe I'm dating myself. I'm losing my voice. So you know, I don't have all the answers, but I'm going to tell you a little bit of just some thoughts so you know the direction. Most likely, we will be having a university-wide promotions process. That'll start at the colleges. You see, it starts at the department and the colleges, and then moves to the centralized, what we call CAP, or whatever you want to call it, the centralized promotion and tenure committee. But again, it has to have criteria that are broad enough to recognize scholarship across a broad range of in disciplines. It has to recognize education across a broad range of disciplines. It has to recognize civic commitment and duties and so on. I think that while you will have a centralized process, because we will be one university, we have to face the fact that we will be one university. We're not going to be siloed universities. It still will work its way through the colleges. Now, regarding the promotion and tenure, and will faculty really have the opportunity to continue in an old track and new track, that's probably not going to be the case. I mean, there are a number of both regulatory issues as well as fairness issues that say that, we are all part of one university and that the criteria will be whatever those criteria are set at that moment in time. Again, this is my gut reaction and feeling on that. I don't know that for a fact. We're waiting, of course, on lots of information from the work groups and others. But in general, we have to function as one university. I think the thing that I'd like to just say about change is really, really hard. It's really hard for all of us. But the one thing that will change, and I can guarantee you will change, is that when we finish consolidating, we will be one university. Not multiple silos, not stuffed together, with duct tape. One university. Yes, ma'am.
I have a follow-up question on the tenure. We currently at ASU have a centralized system, starting departmental, goes to college, and then goes to committee. We have about 20 to 30 activations every year, which takes the university several weeks in November to review. I understand that at ASU we do not have a centralized committee at the moment. It's just departmental and then it's up at the college level. Having a centralized university PMT for the new university would mean that committee would not only review 20 to 30 portfolios from ASU, but also I understand about 80 or 90 from PHSU. So how is that committee going to achieve reviewing 100 to 120 applications from all these different colleges?
So I'll answer, maybe Dr. Bloodworth can answer. So you, in fact, I'm glad you mentioned that, because in fact the question of a centralized app or motion committee, the best practice ASU uses, that ASU does not. For those of you who are picking the best practice from institutions or outside, trying to amount of time, of course it's an inner process, so that's a good question. But then it speaks to process. At the end of the day, it has to do with organization. You speak of a committee. But at the end of the day, a committee may be in multiple different committees, or maybe one committee that has lots of stuff to work on it. UCLA, my previous academic appointment, one centralized committee. It's a pretty big school, worked well. So that's a matter of organization and staffing and structuring in work groups and so on and so forth. So I don't have a specific answer to tell you, except that large number of universities that are much larger than we are do this on a routine basis. So that's a process issue. Glad you brought up that actually ASU does have a centralized promotions process, and that's actually the thing that we're going to be implementing throughout the new university.
It's complicated, Brigitte, but we've got differences at Augusta, and that the responsibilities of faculty here may not be quite what the responsibilities of faculty are. Those differences are now exaggerated. Because Georgia Health Sciences has faculty members who teach nothing to do with research. We have a lot of faculty who do a lot of teaching and a little bit of research. So somehow we've dealt with that relatively here, I think, given the expectations in reality in this program, therefore from the expectations in this program because of the workload, the kind of students and opportunities. So I don't know what will happen, but what I hope will happen is that we'll take advantage of the concerns, experience, and the voices of faculty at both institutions to this out, figure out a way to do it so that we can do well what it's supposed to be doing. Whether it's in some center, now Georgia Health Sciences is strictly research, or in some department here where it's primarily teaching. So I think there's got to be some flexibility and some real thinking about this, so that we. Another what here is somehow the expectations for a research university were translated to very heavy expectations for publications and research among faculty who by and large have not been expected to do a great deal of it. And I think we're going to have to work this out so that we can do the job that we're supposed to do, whether it is in teaching freshman composition or doing high level research in our institute at what is now Georgia Health Sciences.
So we dovetail on what Dr. Burke said. At our institution today, GHU, there's a monstrous variety of faculty. I'm not saying you don't have variety here, but there, as I showed in one of my earlier blogs, about 70% or so of the faculty are much strictly educational. Another 30% do pretty much mostly research. And then, of course, you have the whole clinical component of people who do that. So we are accustomed to dealing with heterogeneity in production. So, the scholarship means many different things. Value and the weight of education means different things and so on. So, in fact, ASU had experience with the census process, right? We have the experience with judge a very heterogeneous population of faculty. So I think at the end it's going to work okay. A lot of the universities, or UCLA or UTA, etc., do this well, and most universities, whether you classify them as research or not, faculty, of course, are educational, not research. So I think in general, like Dr. Bloodworth said, we're going to have to do this fully, think this through. But at the end of the day, there is experience already in the system on how to deal with great heterogeneity in faculty. Good point.
Question is, who knows best what a professor of finance should do, what a professor in learning support should do, what a professor in the Medical College of Georgia, the medical school, should do? Who knows best besides the faculty in those units and the people who are responsible for making sure that the missions of those individual academic units are accomplished and they fit with the mission of the university at large? So I hope as we go forward, the primary answer on what this would be comes from those who know best it should be.
Question? Oh, somebody.
I have a question about our future. We're excited about the combination of campuses and becoming one and having a future new university. I've heard a lot of talk about having a huge presence in downtown Augusta. And I'm wondering if you can give any enlightenment on what your future plans are. Do you foresee us being down there all the way through up to here at one campus? And my second question is one of my very, very big concerns as a staff employee is how are we going to do the parking situation when we find the two? I'm sorry, but see that a motion in because if I have to say what those parkings are over there, I have to really think about that. That's something that's very important to me because it affects my income. So I would just like to know if you have any information or have any ideas about how you're going to handle that in the future.
Can I punt to Dr. Bloodworth on that one? Let me just give you thoughts. Okay, I'd love your of getting all the land, riverfront, all the way up to Somerville. So Karen, saw you in here. I'm working on that. But obviously we're not. So the question really of downtown presence really has to do with what the governor and the Properties Commission of the state of Georgia has deeded to the University of Georgia the former Golf Hall of Fame, and that's property of 16 acres. You don't know. It's from the riverfront. And actually, big universities, either riverfront or port or something, has properties like that. It's Columbus State, Columbus, or USC in Columbia, and so on and so forth. Lots of those things. So this is not unusual. This will be these kind of properties are what we call of creative properties. To put in things that are actually first synergized with the area and synergized at downtown, right? So it tends to be more urban stuff. For example, it won't be a medical facility people have to go see. And so on and so forth. Arts and music and maybe some housing and certainly innovation center, creativity, biotech, and these kind of things. We're working on lots of different thoughts around this. But that allows us to have an anchor in the downtown, right? And so as we do that, then we need to begin to look at other institutions. Columbus State, we're going to try to do a road trip down to Columbus State and see how they've worked with their downtown to help transform it, because they have done a great job in that regard. But really, it's an iterative process. There is no firm plans. Believe it or not, we don't have firm plans already yesterday. We have proposals. We certainly are not just, making things up as we go. But those have to be vetted. They have to be thought through. And, a lot of those plans began before Consolidated University was proposed and so on and so forth. But certainly, I'm a big proponent of having a presence downtown to work with that community so that, in fact, our downtown is better, because at the end of the day, if our downtown is better, our community is better, the recruitment of individuals is better, recruitment of students is better, and it's good for everybody. It's a symbiotic relationship. I'm a very big believer in that. But, again, no firm plans in that regard. Parking, now, I will tell you that parking is always a concern. It's actually the number one, by the way, number one or number two concern of every employee in almost every university that has been surveyed. So it is a major issue. I don't have any answers for you. What I can tell you is that 65% of the surface Somerville is a flat parking lot, and that actually is not the best use of property. Having said that, there are lots of ways to handle parking in that regard, and that may or may not incur a fee. When people talk about fees, I will tell you, and tuition and fees and so on and so forth, there is a reality. I had recently the newspaper, by the way, the student newspaper said, Dr. Lee speaks of a business. This is not a business. Well, frankly, what a billion-dollar enterprise is business. Right? And having faculty who have their retirements and their classrooms and their supplies is a business. I mean, you have to run it in a business. So, for example, when you talk about tuition, we certainly don't want tuition to rise too much. But on the other hand, we do want our salaries to get better. We do want to be able to recruit more faculty. We do want to have new facilities. How are you going to do that? I mean, you just, we're going to do philanthropy. We're working on that. But there's a cost and a benefit. Same thing for parking. There may be a cost and a benefit to that. There are no plans. I can't give you a single answer. But I'm just simply telling you that everything that you measure is going to have a cost and a benefit, right? I mean, maybe things are going to be better, so we'll be willing to pay for it. Maybe not. I don't have an answer for it in that regard. We're still, by the way, dealing with that with our own integration, right? Hospital employees pay a certain amount, and university pay a certain amount. And we still are dealing with that. Parking seems to be those sacrosanct things that we'll deal with later on. So they're not going to be the first tier that we're going to deal with. Problems, right? It's a good question. It's a good question.
I think parking is really, it's not just that it's the number one problem for a lot of campuses, and the thing that people seem to want to always express their feelings about to the president. But it has something to do with students, too. And all of us at Augusta State University have grown up with a commuting campus. And I'd like to know how many people here on our faculty have not encountered a student who has had a problem with parking. Last fall, in the little class that I was teaching, one of my students had 3 different part-time jobs in 3 different places. And so the ability to get on and off campus in order, conceivably, to be in my class at time was complicated. And so I think, however we think about parking, we need to give some special consideration to how students maneuver it. Even if we go down in the future, even if we add more student housing, still, it's hard ever to imagine a situation when we have fewer than 80% of students who are actually commuting. They may be living in town, but they're driving on campus. So it's a problem in need of a solution. We'll probably never solve it to everyone's satisfaction, but there's a lot of thought going into it. I'm sure a lot of thought will continue to go into it.
It's a complex issue. How many of your students are going to stay here and reside? Are all of them going to commute? Lots of things. So that one is a tough one. Believe it or not, while it seems simple, it's probably one of the tougher ones to deal with. So it's a good point. Other questions for us? Yes, sir. I'm making sure nobody else. Anybody over here? No. Okay, great.
Hey, use the mic.
Yeah, use the mic if you don't mind.
You learned that in my class. Use the microphone.
Yes, sir. Thank you. My name is Ethan Holloman, a newly elected president for Augusta Student Government, and I'm a little bit concerned about what we can expect regarding the level of representation for students. I know at Augusta State there are various university committees that student government's involved in appointing students to those committees, like the Student Technology Fee Committee and Student Activities Fee and so forth. But regarding the consolidation, there's going to be some debate regarding the level of representation for GHSU students and ASU. What can we expect? Are we going to have an expanded level where we have both GHSU students and ASU students in the same committees discussing these fees, or are we going to be kind of left in the dark if fees decide to go up and so forth?
I'm going to answer that. There won't be any GHSU or ASU students. So no. See, that's the first issue about mindset. There's going to be students for this new university. Anybody want to donate $100 million? We'll name it right now. We'll get it over with. The answer is we like and we want student representation. Sometimes in our own campus, one of the things that we have the greatest difficulty is not having enough student representation because most of our campus is graduate. These people are pretty busy. They're coming in and out and that kind of thing, and it's difficult to do that. So we actually want student representation on as many of the committees that are appropriate, by the way, as possible. So that is not an issue. We are certainly not interested in not having a student body that is not engaged. It's just a little harder to engage the graduate health sciences student body. It's just the nature of the beast. So from that point of view, I don't think that we need to be worried. But what will change, and I think it's important that everybody understand this, what will change is the degree of intimacy. Okay? Now, I admire Dr. Bloodworth. He walks the campus. He knows everybody's name. It is scary. But I am not going to be able to do that. I mean, I'm going to have 10,000 students. I have 1,000 faculty. I probably do eventually learn all faculty people if I last long enough. But, the point is, that level of intimacy, to be fair, would be disingenuous to pretend. So, can the students just walk into the president's office and say, I need a talk? Well, maybe not. I don't know. I have to make appointments with my wife so that we can, see each other. But as far as voice, we want you to be there. In fact, we've sort of been wanting to be there more. Okay? With you.
Let me say something in response to Mr. Ethan Holloman's question. Sometimes some of my responses to responses are actually marks I'm trying to put on the wall for other people to remember. Student leadership is incredibly important. When I came here, there wasn't a great deal of that. The number of student organizations now must be 3 times the number that were here when I came. I was at the Student Services Awards banquet last week. It's really impressive to see I don't know how many students were there. I mean to add it up. All the students who were given some kind of award or recognized. You have a record number of student senators this year, at least record since 2003. You had more in 2003. So you've really built up the opportunities for student leadership at Augusta State University. Not only in student government, but in Jaguar Activities Board, in the student judiciary, but in the fraternities and sororities and all the clubs and organizations. And that's incredibly important, especially for undergraduate students, because it is a place of leadership, is an opportunity to work together with others, to learn how to work together with others. And every time I see a gathering, such as I saw last week at the banquet, I'm just really impressed at how articulate our student leaders are, and how many of them there are. So as we go forward, mark on the wall, we need to make sure that we continue that kind of progress and those kind of opportunities for student leadership and development.
Other questions? Make sure that we're not cutting into your Chick-fil-A sandwich time.
Lou Ann.
I'm thinking about things that SACs or other boards may find that we need to improve before we can be classed as an R1 university. I'm thinking about, for example, since I work in a library, I spent a good bit of my career at an R1, and they just had a much larger budget for materials, subscriptions, et cetera. So if SACs or someone else comes up with things that they say, well, you must have X before you can move forward, do you know if the state will allow extra funds to bring us up to speed in those areas? Thank you.
I'm going to have Dr. Bloodworth answer something because I don't know, but I can tell you that for GHSU, the state provides, of the university, provides 27% of the budget. It's only 16% of the budget for the entire enterprise. So I think we have to be very careful that we don't keep repeating, will the state pay for this or that. Even at ASU, where the state pays a greater proportion of the funds, it's still not the vast majority of it. So I think it's important to understand that we will have to find lots of other sources. Let's assume that between the state and philanthropy and revenue of other sources and so on, we're able to support that. The answer to you is we will do what is necessary to ensure a successful university. We meaning GHSU at this moment, are also struggling with the issue of library. We need better facilities for study halls. We need to understand better, how many print hard copies do we need to get versus online, and which online do we need to do that, and if it's got 3 readers, is that enough, and so on and so forth. And it's a very complicated thing, which is why I'm glad that actually we have people dealing with that all the time. But we're struggling with the same question you are. Those things will have to be addressed if that is an issue. But at the end of the day, my impression has been that actually many universities are struggling with that because they built facilities for a time before the internet. They built facilities for a time before instantaneous access off your laptop or your iPad. And so we're all having issues as to decide what exactly does a library and library services do today and how we're going to formulate it. But I think it's extraordinarily important.
Oh, let's see, Luann, I was once a librarian for a short while at San Antonio Public Library. And aside from the time when I wrecked the bookmobile, it was a pretty good experience. So I knew something a long time ago about the importance of libraries. And I think the answer to your question is exactly what Dr. Azziz said. We'll always do what we have to do to make sure the libraries work, that there are sources of information, places for our students to study, and absolutely essential parts of their education.
Other questions? Yeah, I don't know if that's on or...
There we go.
There we go.
We like to talk about ASU being a family, and I have no problem with us expanding the family. But I'm wondering, how do we go about figuring out who's in charge of departments? The consolidation question from the bell ringer, to public relations, to registrars, will people have to reapply for their jobs? And how do we determine who's in charge?
We have, I'll try that and you can follow. I think we have taken some huge steps towards figuring that out. We're not going to have 2 registrars, we're going to have 1 registrar. Everywhere where we've had 2 things, somebody will be doing something a little bit different. This is actually follows upon what Dr. Azziz said earlier, that job security is not a problem. People may have slightly different roles as we go forward. I think there's been a genuine, honest effort to put people in good places that will take advantage of their talents and move the new university forward. As we go down the line, and as we see how things perform, I guess there could be some shifting and reorganization later on. But from the get-go, there is a structure, there are places for people, and we can start to move forward.
So let me just explain that I think when we speak about a lean organization, most of your administrators at ASU are double and triple hats. They're not going to be able to keep those double and triple hats when all of a sudden their portfolio goes from, say, 300 faculty to 1,000 faculty, or from 6,500 students to 10,000 students, and so on and so forth. So people are going to have to, focusing down. That's why at the end of the day, there's not a lot of shedding of people, because actually what's happening is those triple hatting, and we have that as well at GHSU. So in that regard, we are working with that. But again, Dr. Bloodworth is absolutely correct. Over time, we're going to have to figure out how things work. This is an iterative process over time. We've tried to select as we move forward, and there's no final on anything, because actually we're not consolidated, so you don't actually appoint people till then. We've tried to chose the best people from either campus to do the best In other words, we want to choose the best people and put them in the place, because otherwise, you don't do that, you don't give people a chance to succeed. Putting people in a position that they're going to really fail at is actually very unfair. I think it's important to know that. The sense of family, I want to talk a little bit before you. There is a lot of discussion about the sense of family, and I will simply have to tell you that we feel very much family-like at GHSU. Not everybody's 10,000 individuals, but we do. We are close. The clinical operations brings us closer. The fact that we're, focused on one mission is closer, and so on. So we tend to feel like a family. But to be fair, it is going to be difficult to maintain, and we're all going to have to be very cognitive of the fact that when we're large, that becomes a little harder to do. And we're just going to have to keep focused on that, because we want to keep a certain level of intimacy, a certain level of familiarity, a certain level of feeling that I belong. But it's going to be tougher. I'm not going to pretend it's not.
And I have a follow-up to that then as well. My concern is, as we're putting all this together and we have to figure out who goes where, what I really don't want to happen is that we keep growing the administration and the staff, and we still can't fill the faculty positions of people that have retired in our departments. When we grow, I want us to be able to hire faculty to teach the students that we have and not keep losing faculty while administration grows.
Well, I absolutely agree. We are trying really hard not to grow the administration. There are some rumors that we create administration just to keep administrators in place, and the reality is that's not the case. I can tell you that at the end of the day, ASU had 5 vice presidents, and that is to manage an operation of 6,500 people, students. It's very, very lean. It's a credit to Dr. Bloodworth that he has kept it this lean, because at the end of the day in consolidation, you don't actually have a lot of surplus people. But I agree, we need to invest in faculty because that's the growth. At GHSU, we are investing heavily in the recruitment of faculty and scientists, heavily. That's how we're moving to doubling our number of researchers. We're moving to double the number of faculty that we have, and hopefully we will be able to do a similar approach to ASU. Remember, we're not consolidated yet, but we are all about growth. That's another thing that will change. We cannot stay the same. That is just not going to be possible. In this environment, we will shrink if we try to stay the same. So growth is going to be important. Where does that money come from? Well, it'll come from philanthropy. It'll come hopefully for some on the state, and it'll come from tuition and fees. And that's why at the end of the day, if you starve the system, it won't grow.
I think Therese Rozier will point this out the fact of meeting tomorrow, but in our appropriations for next year here at Augusta State, the Board of Regents is giving us money for 3 new faculty lines, a good bit of money to create enrollment management strategies, and some other categories like that. So I think we're being fairly well treated right now. We just need to keep moving down that track.
Anybody over here? Quiet group. Yes, ma'am.
Excuse me, I'm losing my voice as well. I'm Kristen Hopkins. I work for the Bell Ringer as well. To kind of follow up on what Jillian said and kind of re-ask the question, what kind of plans does Dr. Penny have for the consolidation while she's here? And anyways, and because it is everybody's kind of going in this transition, it's from going from one person to another, what do you plan for us to have some sort of stability during this time and these transitions?
Bloodworth?
I'm sorry. I didn't fully get the question again.
Somebody read it for her.
Yes, I might even read it for her.
Can you read it for her, please? We have the speaker down here.
Ethan is good at
this. Go ahead and read the question.
All right. It is rumored that Dr. Bloodworth...
I can ask that since it's already brought up. No, it's okay. I got it. You don't take her over this notebook. I got it. Okay, I guess I'll bring up. And I just have to say it was a rumor that I heard that you had offered to stay until Dr. Azziz, took the position as president. What was the need for the interim president if, you offered? I'm saying that's a rumor. That's a side note. The question was, not a rumor. That is also kind of a rumor. Okay. What are her plans while she's here? What kind of things will she be facilitating as far as the consolidation goes? And what Christian added on was, what kind of stability can we see having you, her, and you, in like a year or so?
It'll be fine. I can answer that in several ways. One, it's true. I did tell the chancellor if he wanted me to stay on until January, I would do it. I did that understanding that staying in this job for another 6 or 7 months was probably not going to extend my life expectancy by 6 or 7 months. So with me, it's okay. I got books to read, things to write, classes to get ready to teach next January. So, just for me, it's fine. But I think that the decision by, and I got this question somewhere here. This came up before. Someone submitted this question. The question is, it's a why. I don't know answers to why questions. I usually know the what, not the whys. Despite Dr. Kenny's excellent qualifications, why did the Board of Regents go to the expense of bringing in interim president from out of state? Well, what I know is, and I spoke to Dr. Kenny last week. I spoke to her last Thursday morning. Is she's really excited about coming here. She brings a wealth of experience, and the first thing that she said to me is, I want to get to know your students, which is good. So I think for someone with that experience to be here as we make this final 6-month, 7-month translation for consolidation will actually be a very good thing. I may carry a little too much institutional memory with me, and it may be selective too. So to have someone in that role is probably going to work out well for the university. And I think you will all be well served by Dr. Kenny. I think she will be interested in taking that role on. And she will be active in it. She will not, I would be a lame duck. Yeah. And so, really a lame duck. So, she will have this appointment. It's her responsibility to make it work. Not completing the end of 19 years of service, but doing something, having, even though it's a 7-month opportunity, something she's never done before in a place where she's never done it. I think she'll be very good.
I don't have much to add to that. That was the, I understand, Chancellor's decision after conversations with Dr. Bloodworth, so can't tell you anything about it. I mean, I am delighted that she seems like a lady with a lot of experience, and that's actually speaks well for us. I think at the end of the day, if an interim was chosen, it was a national figure, and I think that we should actually applaud that. I think it really speaks very well for what the Board of Regents are viewing us as and what they're willing to invest in us. But beyond that, I can't tell you very much. I think we're actually up. I'm getting the sign down here. Okay. So thank you very much for being here. Appreciate and hopefully we'll see each other more and more. Thank you.